Then 4 p.m. Eastern time, Austin, Texas is the setting. The Clemson Tigers taking on the Longhorns. We got Mr. State Champion, Cade Klubnik, back in the Lone Star State, going up against his old high school rival, Quinn Ewers. A Longhorns team that is very frustrated with the way the SEC championship game ended. A Clemson team that walked out with a 56-yard walk-off to be able to get into the college football playoff. You want to talk about lots of different ways that this can go.
Ooh.
I mean, I tell you what, you could tell me that the final score is Texas 31, Clemson 3, and I would believe it. And yet, I also am out here in all my expert brackets picking Clemson to advance in this game with an outright upset. So what, Danny, what sends us down one road or the other?
What version of Quinn Ewers shows up? You know, can they generate the offense the way they have at times? I still think something's not right with him. He just does not have the arm talent that he had earlier this season and potentially, you know, in years past. I mean, he did put up a lot of yards against Georgia, but he still missed some guys open, and he had the 2 picks, which were really costly. So I think it does come down to, like, it's pretty simple, but how does he play in this game? And I think Clemson could provide some problems for him.
Listen, oblique injuries heal with time and rest. And by time, I mean time where you're not doing anything.
Off. Time
off.
Like
when a baseball player has an oblique injury, he's usually gone for 6 weeks because even when he's feeling better, they typically want to take a little more time to make sure he's completely 100% before putting him back out there. Quinn Ewers was not gone that long. I can guarantee you his oblique is not fully healed. He's just playing through it and dealing with it. And then you add the ankle injury on top of it, which has sapped a lot of his mobility in the last month. Like, he's probably 70%. And I've talked about it. I wrote about it. It is really impacting what they do in the red zone because he doesn't have the juice to fire in like a rope into a tight window. So it's a whole bunch of little bubble screens, regular screens, and like fades to the back corner. And they're in it. They're unable to run the ball. And that really kills them when it comes to finishing drives. They're settling far too many field goals. And then, as we saw in the SEC championship, sometimes they're not even making those field goals. Yeah. So that's going to be a huge part. But I think the biggest question to this game, to me, is does Clemson's offense do anything? Because we have seen Clemson when they faced good defenses. Like, if you look statistically when it comes to scoring points, this is the worst offense in the college football playoff. But more than anything, like, what happened when they went against Georgia? Nothing. They went against Louisville. Nothing. When they've gone against better teams, their offense completely stalls. When they're facing teams that they overwhelm, they stunt on them. They run all over. Cade Klubnik's running for 200 yards. He's running for a 50-yard touchdown as time expires to beat Pitt. He's doing all sorts of crazy stuff. But when they face other good teams, there's no really – it's like, okay, we take that away. What are you going to do? Oh, crap, we can't do anything. Texas can take that away. So what does Cade Klubnik do? Is Maffa able to get room on the ground to keep that offense alive? Can a receiver on that team make plays against this Texas secondary? I don't know. Like, I think Clemson covers, but it's more of my doubt in Texas's inability to finish drives that will allow them to pull away. But like you said, Chip, Texas could win this game by 40, and I won't be that surprised.
And you know what I see? I see it with Cade has no time. He's got interior defensive linemen in his lap as soon as he's got the ball in his hands. He's got edge rushers flying at his head. Like, I just see something maybe similar to the season opener against Georgia, where your eyes can just tell you, it's like, oh my God, they cannot run their offense right now. And that is a respect for Texas's defense. All of the other stuff is soft factors where I'm like, I don't know. Watch out for Clemson. Gripping it too tight. They haven't even announced it as a sellout. There might not be a lot of fans. They're thinking about buying the quarterfinal tickets, and they just went to Atlanta. We'll see. But there is sometimes football is simple, and when one defensive front can entirely destroy everything you want to do offensively, it's hard to score points.
Yeah, like, this is Clemson's offense in a nutshell. As far as points per drive are concerned, They had 5 games where they averaged 3.5 points per drive or more. They had 5 games where they averaged fewer than 2 points per drive. Like, you don't know what offense is going to show up. When the good one shows up, they can hang. When it doesn't, it is just ugly.
I agree with a lot of that, but like they did move the ball against South Carolina. They just didn't put it in the red zone. So we talk about Texas red zone struggles. I would say ditto those at times for Clemson.
Both those teams combined for like 800 yards, and they combined for 31 total points in that game.
Yeah, that was wild. I mean, Clemson should be healthier now on the offensive line after a month. Speaking of health, Sark said Isaiah Bond is going to do everything in his power to try to play, but that's not a he's going to play statement. He re-injured that ankle there in the fourth quarter. That one matters to me a lot because Bond is the best receiver on that team for my money by a good bit. So if they don't have him, I think that is actually a concern. Definitely think Texas can get pressure on the Clemson offensive line. I mean, a lot of teams did. Pitt got a pretty good bit actually that game, but now Clemson got super dinged up in that game, as did Pitt. So I'm curious, to see what happens there. They're both red zone struggling teams, honestly. I think if you think Texas kills Clemson, it probably comes down to I was searching okay, what's like a data point of a team that is roughly as good as Clemson that they handled, and I think it's the A&M game. It was only 2 games ago, and they went in the A&M, and they pretty much handled them, and that was pretty impressive. Like A&M and Clemson are roughly the same caliber team. I think Clemson just had a couple more dubs, so and got the conference title game. So that's probably what you're going to point to, because you could go down the stretch and say, okay, Vandy, they struggled. Florida was a third-string quarterback. They killed him. Arkansas, it wasn't a struggle, but it wasn't like a complete, dominant, like smoke them nonstop win. Kentucky was in disarray. They turn around. 1 week later, they go to A&M. They win convincingly. So that to me is probably your data point, because I was looking for like what's a non-Georgia data point. I think that's the one. That's pretty recent. So, but Klubnik does throw it a hell of a lot better than Marcel Reed. Doesn't run it quite as well.